Iran just launched its most intense bombardment of Israeli territory since this war began. Wave after wave of ballistic missiles, hypersonic weapons, and drone swarms hitting targets across Israel. Tel Aviv under siege. Haifa port damaged. Ben Gurion airport shut down. Casualties mounting. Air defenses overwhelmed. And in the middle of this escalating crisis, the Trump administration just made a decision that nobody saw coming. A decision that fundamentally changes the strategic calculus of this entire conflict. Over the next few minutes, you're going to see exactly what Iran just hit, how Israel's defenses are holding up, and what Trump's emergency plan means for where this war goes next. Before we continue, thanks for tuning in. Your support keeps this channel going. Please subscribe and like the video so more people see this critical analysis. Now let's get into it. On April 3rd, 2026, Iran executed what the IRGC is calling Operation Decisive Storm. This was not another incremental wave in the ongoing missile campaign. This was a massive coordinated assault designed to saturate Israel's air defense network and inflict maximum damage across multiple strategic targets simultaneously. The numbers tell the story. In a single 12-hour period, Iran launched over 200 ballistic missiles, 150 cruise missiles, and approximately 300 drones at Israeli territory. That's more firepower in half a day than Iran deployed in the entire first week of this conflict. The targeting was systematic. Tel Aviv's metropolitan area was hit with cluster munitions designed to spread destruction across wide areas. Haifa Port, Israel's primary fuel import facility, took direct hits that ignited fires in storage tanks. Ben Gurion airport was struck multiple times, forcing a complete shutdown of all air traffic. Military installations across central Israel came under sustained attack. And for the first time in this war, Iranian missiles reached Jerusalem, striking areas near government buildings. Israel's Iron Dome, David's Sling, and aero defense systems intercepted a significant portion of the incoming threats. But the sheer volume overwhelmed the network. Israeli military sources acknowledged that the interception rate during the peak of the bombardment dropped below 70%. That means roughly 30% of incoming projectiles reached their targets, or impact zones. In a single night, more Iranian weapons successfully penetrated Israeli defenses than in the previous 50 days of conflict combined. The human cost has been significant. Israeli emergency services reported over 2,000 people wounded, with at least 15 confirmed dead. Hospitals across Tel Aviv and Haifa are operating at surge capacity. Civil defense shelters that had been used intermittently throughout the war are now housing thousands of residents who cannot safely return to damaged homes. The economic impact is compounding. Insurance companies are declaring entire neighborhoods as high-risk zones, which means homeowners cannot get coverage. Businesses are shutting down because employees cannot safely commute. Supply chains are disrupted because transportation infrastructure has been damaged. This is not just military pressure. This is societal strain at a level Israel has not experienced since the Yom Kippur War in 1973. And here's where the Trump administration's response becomes critical. Because in the middle of this bombardment, while Israeli cities were under fire and casualties were mounting, President Trump held an emergency National Security Council meeting. And the decision that came out of that meeting was not what anyone expected. Trump did not authorize immediate large-scale retaliation strikes into Iran. He did not deploy additional carrier groups to the region. He did not threaten nuclear escalation or issue ultimatums to Tehran. Instead, Trump announced an emergency diplomatic initiative. He publicly stated that the United States is prepared to mediate direct negotiations between Israel and Iran to establish an immediate ceasefire. He called on both sides to halt military operations within 72 hours, and he offered to host talks in a neutral location with American security guarantees for both parties. This is a complete reversal of the administration's previous posture. For the past 2 months, the White House has been backing Israel's right to self-defense without conditions, providing unlimited military aid, and publicly supporting strikes deep into Iranian territory. The messaging has been clear and consistent. America stands with Israel, and Iran will face consequences for aggression. Now, suddenly, the message is different. Let's talk. Let's negotiate. Let's find a diplomatic off-ramp before this spirals further. The shift is driven by 3 factors that converged in a way the administration cannot ignore. Factor 1, American casualties. 7 U.S. service members have been killed in Iranian attacks on bases across the region. That number might seem small compared to the scale of the conflict, but it represents a threshold that changes domestic political calculations. When American troops start coming home in body bags, public support for foreign wars collapses. Polling data from the past week shows 65% of Americans now oppose continued U.S. military involvement in the Middle East. Congressional pressure on the White House is mounting. And Trump is facing an election year where foreign policy failures can cost him the presidency. Factor 2, economic pain. Oil prices have spiked above $110 per barrel and are projected to hit $130 if the conflict continues. American gas prices are approaching $4 per gallon nationally, with some states already exceeding that threshold. Inflation, which had been cooling, is now reaccelerating because energy costs feed into every sector of the economy. The Federal Reserve is caught between fighting inflation and supporting growth, and there are no good options. Consumer confidence is plummeting, stock markets are volatile, and voters are blaming the administration for economic conditions that feel like they're spiraling out of control. Factor 3, Israeli exhaustion. This is the hardest variable to quantify, but it's the most important. Israel has been fighting continuously for 2 months. Reservists have been called up and kept in service far longer than planned. The economy is contracting because a significant portion of the workforce is deployed. Air defense interceptor stockpiles are running low, and American resupply cannot keep pace with consumption rates. Casualty numbers are accumulating. And the Israeli public is starting to ask a question that no government wants to hear. What does victory look like, and is it achievable? When those three factors converge, American casualties, economic pain, and ally exhaustion, the political pressure for a diplomatic solution becomes overwhelming. And Trump, despite his hawkish rhetoric, is a transactional president who responds to political pressure. If continuing the war costs him the election, he will pursue the deal. And that's exactly what's happening. The emergency plan Trump just announced has 3 components. Component 1, immediate 72-hour ceasefire. Both sides stop all military operations. No strikes, no launches, no incursions. American satellites and intelligence assets will monitor compliance in real time. Any violation triggers the collapse of the process. Component 2, direct negotiations in Switzerland. Representatives from Iran, Israel, and the United States meet in Geneva under American mediation. The agenda is narrow. Ceasefire terms, security guarantees, and a framework for de-escalation. This is not about resolving the entire Israeli-Iranian conflict. This is about stopping the immediate bleeding. Component 3, American security guarantees. The United States commits to providing Israel with enhanced air defense systems, intelligence support, and a formal defense treaty that obligates American intervention if Iran resumes attacks. In exchange, Israel agrees to halt strikes into Iranian territory except international monitoring of its military posture. For Iran, the guarantee is different. The U.S. commits to lifting specific sanctions targeting Iran's oil exports and unfreezing Iranian assets held in Western banks. In exchange, Iran halts all missile production, allows international inspectors into military facilities, and agrees to a verifiable cap on its ballistic missile inventory. This is the deal framework, and it's being offered right now in the middle of active combat because Trump believes the alternative is worse. The alternative is a war that continues for months, drains American resources, destabilizes the global economy, and delivers no clear victory for anyone. Now, let's talk about whether this plan can actually work, because the obstacles are significant. Israel has to accept that a country that just bombarded its cities with hundreds of missiles will face limited consequences. That's a hard sell to an Israeli public that wants retribution. The Israeli government has built its entire strategy around eliminating Iran's offensive capability. Accepting a ceasefire that leaves Iran's remaining missile stockpile intact feels like accepting defeat, and there's no guarantee Iran won't violate the agreement the moment it's convenient. Iran has to accept intrusive inspections, caps on its missile program, and international monitoring that it has resisted for decades. The Iranian regime has built its legitimacy on resistance to Western pressure. Accepting American terms, even favorable ones, undermines that narrative, and hardliners within the IRGC are unlikely to support any deal that constrains Iran's military options. Both sides have domestic political factions that benefit from continued conflict. In Israel, right-wing parties gain support when the country is under threat. In Iran, the IRGC's power grows during wartime. Any deal that ends the fighting threatens those interests, which means sabotage is likely. And even if both governments agree in principle, implementation will be contested at every step. Every violation, real or alleged, will trigger accusations of bad faith. Every delay in sanctions relief or weapons shipments will be used as justification to resume hostilities. The deal is fragile by design. But here's why Trump is pushing it anyway. Because the alternative is not Israeli victory. The alternative is attrition. Israel cannot sustain this level of defensive operations indefinitely. Interceptor stockpiles are finite. Economic damage is compounding. Public morale is eroding, and Iran has demonstrated that it can penetrate Israeli defenses with enough volume. If the war continues, Israel faces a choice: accept ongoing casualties and economic decline, or escalate to strikes that risk regional war. Neither option is good. For the United States, the alternative is worse. Continued involvement means more American casualties, higher oil prices, economic contraction, and electoral consequences. The war is not popular at home. It's not producing clear results, and it's costing resources that the U.S. needs for other strategic priorities, particularly competition with China. Trump's emergency plan is not ideal. It's not a permanent solution. It's not even a particularly strong agreement. But it's the least bad option available right now. And in crisis diplomacy, least bad is often the best you can get. So what happens next? The 72-hour ceasefire window closes in 2 days. If both sides comply, talks begin in Geneva. If either side violates the ceasefire, the plan collapses and the war resumes with no diplomatic off-ramp in sight. Israel is signaling conditional acceptance. The government has not committed publicly, but back-channel communications suggest they're willing to explore the framework if American security guarantees are credible. Iran is more ambiguous. Official statements call the proposal insufficient, but Iranian diplomats are reportedly engaging with American counterparts through Swiss intermediaries. That suggests Tehran is at least considering the option. The next 48 hours will determine whether this war enters a diplomatic phase or escalates into something worse. Because if the ceasefire fails, both sides will interpret that as proof that negotiation is impossible. And once that belief sets in, the conflict becomes existential. Wars fought for survival don't end in negotiations. They end in collapse. Share this video with everyone who needs to understand what just changed. Iran just bombarded Israel harder than any previous attack. Trump just proposed a ceasefire that reverses 2 months of American policy. And the next 2 days will determine whether this war ends or enters a phase that nobody can control. This is not a permanent solution. This is an emergency brakes, being pulled before the train goes off the cliff. Whether it works depends on decisions being made right now in Tel Aviv, Tehran, and Washington. Thanks for watching. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the ceasefire will hold, or is this war beyond negotiation? Subscribe for continued coverage, and I'll see you in the next one.